Hello everybody and welcome to Poland Daily Travel. We're here in Praga on the east side of the Vistula River, and behind me you will see the cemetery to the cholera victims of the plague of the early 1870s. And next to me is Nicholas Richardson. Hi, Nicholas.
Hi, Will.
What would you say is the most important bit of verse, the most important, we can say it's not verse, but a poem in the English language?
I'm not sure. There are so many good ones.
Wonderful train going by.
Exactly.
The energy of life and travel and transport continues, right?
Of course. Very important point.
The most important poem in the English language is the verb to be.
To be.
I am. You are. He is. She is. We are. You are. They are. There's nothing more important than this.
No.
And it's worth thinking about. We also have Shakespeare, to be or not to be, that everyone knows. And it's so famous for a reason. We're still alive, and we're fighting, to stay alive. These people lost their lives, and there weren't that many. There were only less than 1,000 people originally buried and commemorated in this cemetery. But the important thing to remember is not how many died, but what it can tell us about how to face such situations. We are not the first.
No, we're not at all the first. Nor will we be the last, I
Nor
suspect.
will we be the last. But we're alive.
We're alive.
And as long as we're alive,
there's hope.
And we're alive together, and we're dependent on each other. And that's why I said this short poem for you. I know you were expecting If by Kipling, which I love as well, or something like that, or from Shakespeare.
Yes, I was expecting a poem, actually.
Once more unto the breach.
Dear friends, yes.
Well, it is a poem, though, if you think about it.
Yeah.
It's basic.
The poetry of life.
The poetry of life. The poetry of communication, and the poetry of meaning, basic meaning. Because poetry is about what it means and how it touches people, right?
Exactly.
At any rate, this was a cholera epidemic. We are continuing through something. It is the most extraordinary year of my life in so many ways. Would you say the same for you?
Yes, it's just very, very odd. And
Yeah.
I think many people are unsettled, me included, by the fact you feel that governments insist on making rules. And then you look at them and you think, well, these rules have no rational or scientific basis. This is just, yet again, an example of governments doing things because they can. As long as it doesn't matter what they do, as long as they do something, people feel reassured. In actual fact,
well, a lot of it is about being reassured.
But what they're doing is actually not reassuring anybody, unfortunately.
Governments are people too. This is what we forget.
I know, but
they're systems.
They're systems, but they seem increasingly to be irrational systems.
Well,
and overtaken by chaos.
If that's the case,
instead of base, I mean, you can even, if you want to, you can even read even within the UK context, you can read the discussions between different groups of scientists about what would be the appropriate response to the lockdown. So you have, from Imperial College London, Professor Neil Ferguson with his rather outdated, dodgy algorithm, which is lock down everything and avoid hundreds of thousands of dying. Then you have the contrary view from the Oxford University Centre for Evidence-Based Medicine, who take a completely different view. Because one's based on a mathematical model, the other is based on assessing the evidence we actually have, obviously. And we just, how is the public supposed to make sense of any of this? I mean, okay, you could say, how are politicians to make sense of it when they're not experts? But somehow you feel that common sense and rationality is the one thing which doesn't enter into anybody's discussion. We all have to take responsibility for ourselves. And the facts of this matter are, this disease is bad if you fall into a very small category of people. And of course, like anything else in life, you can be fit, healthy and young, still get it and die. But that's a very small minority. We should be looking at who is it affecting most, how do we protect those people, and how do we go on with our lives? Because the one thing which is certain is a destroyed economy is not protecting anybody's health. And what we are witnessing in Europe, and the United Kingdom is a particularly astounding example of this, is a willful destruction of the economy, which is people's lives, people's futures, people's health today. It's pointless allegedly pretending to save somebody from COVID if they die of depression or suicide or stress, or more importantly, because they can't get to the hospital for a cancer diagnosis.
And life is full of risk.
Exactly.
I mean, life is, in insurance, in law you have assumption of risk.
Yeah, exactly.
Or in insurance business, life is an assumption of risk. There are no guarantees. That's what people have to understand.
Right.
And but at least we have better guarantees now. And who knows what the future holds in terms of science, in terms of longevity and further health. But let's have a cure for cancer. I haven't lost anyone close or in my, acquaintance circle to COVID.
No.
But I lost a friend to cancer,
Yeah, well,
and three friends to cancer in the last 2
my
years.
sister had COVID and was fine,
she was
is fine now. And her,
Well,
and her husband, my
Mr.
brother-in-law.
Trump famously
Yes, exactly.
met COVID like a
Yeah, well, of course, because he had the best COVID ever
Like-
and the best response and the
like
best recovery.
Iron Man, yeah.
Exactly.
But he had all the services available immediately. But still, you never know. At any rate, it's always been true throughout history that people with the best medicine and the best food and the best, what means the best immunity
Exactly.
system, tend to live. But cholera was a big exception.
Yes.
Can I tell you a few people who died of
Yeah,
cholera
please
that
do.
are quite famous? Hegel, the philosopher,
Right, okay.
wasn't it thesis and antithesis?
Thesis,
Isn't that Hegel?
antithesis, which
Yeah.
then became the new synthesis, which then itself
Yeah.
became the new thesis, which then became the new antithesis, and this sort
Which is kind
Hegel's
of
dialectic, I think it's called.
That's right. The theory of modern politics really comes from this and modern thought. But then Clausewitz, who was also the von Clausewitz, who was the author of the famous On War,
Exactly.
the book On War. You had to read that in college. I had to in history class, and but also a very famous Polish person. One of the most famous died of
That's
of
right.
cholera. Do you know who it was?
Mickiewicz.
Right, Adam Mickiewicz, which is fascinating. But he didn't get it in Poland. He got it in wasn't it Turkey, I believe?
Yes.
Yeah. Byron, his great hero, died in Greece, and he died in Turkey on a similar messianic adventure. A poetic dream. Fascinating man, absolutely fascinating visionary. We were talking, I think, in a history program, or you were talking in a history program, that's right, that I was producing with someone, with Ivo Bender, who related the story of Mickiewicz saying that the only way the enslaved peoples, like the Poles and other nations, particularly in Central Europe, could be free would be through a world war. And he was saying this
100 years on
100 years
in
before,
advance,
or 80,
yes.
90, 100 years before
Exactly.
the First World War. So there is something to poetic vision. We need something of a poetic vision now, I would suggest. And that's why I started with that poem. We need to understand it at our basic humanity.
Yeah, I think we need more positivity as well. All
do.
the media and governments are trying to frighten everybody. Instead of actually saying, for most people, it is not anything to worry about. Take precautions. You cross the road, you take precautions, and you're perfectly safe.
Well, it's the old thing, that fear is preferred by power than love.
Yeah, because
But we know from Jesus and the stories of saints and the stories of
course.
Buddha and other religions, Krishnamurti, that that people, there is a much
Of
higher
course.
principle that people obey.
Yeah, the governments
And we
prefer,
should remember that.
Governments prefer fear because then they can control people. And the reality is we should not be afraid. We should take sensible precautions. You and I are not afraid when we
I
cross
think
the
you
road.
control people more with love. That was my point.
Well, you should do, yes.
But
that's
governments
not,
are short-term thinkers.
Exactly. They don't
Yeah.
think that.
Yeah.
And we should be much more positive, I think.
Yeah.
And not fear this disease. I don't fear COVID. I fear the stupidity of the governments, which may actually impose some restrictions on me, which make it less likely that I'll survive. If you close somebody's economy, if you enclose people in their houses, their stress levels go up, their immune system then is less effective. And this is a great tragedy. Closing gymnasia, for example.
I know
you like
it's
to
terrible because I love the
go to the gym to
I
keep
love
fit.
the gym, yeah.
If you keep fit, you have a better immune system. You're
Yeah.
much more able to resist this.
It's true.
It's completely mad what
Well, I
governments
also
are
love
doing.
going to a restaurant with friends.
Of course.
And working in the restaurant. I do a lot of work in a restaurant or in a coffee bar or even a bar.
Well, exactly.
even
And
though-
travel, hard to show people where they can travel if they can't actually have a cup of coffee or a cup of tea
No,
or
I
a
mean,
meal
you
when
get
they
your
get
computer out and you sit at the table.
Yeah, you
and
become an armchair
yeah.
traveller.
Yeah.
Like there's that great line in.
Well, we are armchair travelers now. That's part of what we're doing. But also we're trying to make sense of what's going on.
Yes.
Because we don't know if we can travel. I'm thinking about going to the States. I don't know if I should.
Well, I want to go to England to
You
visit
wanna
my
go to
father for
England?
Christmas. I've not seen him since last Christmas.
Let's take this up in the next show.
Yeah, of course,
Our
yes.
plans and how we feel about that and what it means regarding travel. Okay?
Of
You
course. Yes,
will you
with
come
pleasure.
back for our next episode?
With pleasure, of course.
Okay. Listen, everybody, I want to thank you very, very much for watching. Remember, to be is the most important poem. Take care of yourselves, and we'll see you next time. Hang in there.